from the American Gulf Coast, it's the Dave Nemo Show.
Always great to visit with great friends. We got a great friend joining us on the program right now, and you know him by now, Tim Aschoff. He's the president of Schaefer Trucking, chief operating officer of Crete Carrier Corporation. Well, you know, Homer Hogg is just left Nashville at the TMC conference up in Indianapolis for the Work Truck Show, and Tim is fresh back from Palm Desert, California. Just attended the 61st Annual Food Shippers of America Conference. So you know there's a lot to talk about coming out of that event, and we'll get into quite a bit of areas, technology, economy, regulations, the whole 9 yards. So we'll kind of put our Schaefer hat on this morning, and Tim Aschoff joins us in just a moment. Really looking forward to a intuitive and incisive conversation with our good friend Tim Aschoff, COO of Crete Carrier Corporation. But today we'll put on the Schaefer hat because Tim, of course, is also president of Schaefer Trucking. And Tim, you know, Schaefer's been around since the late 1930s, and you kind of, well, around here we kind of tend to skip over details sometimes, and we always feel like everybody knows everything, but we really haven't talked about Schaefer very much. And I know you don't want to spend a lot of time doing this, but give us a little bit of history there about Schaefer and what you guys are up to today.
Sure. It's great to be on the show again. As you mentioned, Schaefer's been around since 1937. Started out in candy country out in eastern Pennsylvania, and that's always been a core part of our service. We serve a lot of the confectionery companies across the country and some of the international companies as well. And
you guys deliver more candy than anybody, right?
Well, yeah, you name the chocolate company in particular, and we've generally hauled a lot of their freight. So that's something we've consistently done over the years, and yes, continue to do that. And certainly we're in Easter season right now, so that's a busy season, not only for chocolate, but you know, Peeps and other things out there that are in the back of our trailers moving around the country. So. No, it's been a great history here. Then also as part of the overall Crete Carrier umbrella, we acquired the Sunflower Carriers. That was a temp control meat hauler out of Nebraska here. Been obviously a company around for a long time as well. And in the early 2000s, we merged Sunflower with Schaefer Trucking and operate all of our temperature control division under the Schaefer Trucking umbrella. So have combined the confectionery with meat and many other products now, and have operate in all 48 states, and continue to grow. Had a great year of growth last year, growing our temperature controlled division by almost 20% in seated trucks. So great time to be here at Schaefer, and certainly, as we'll talk, food's a great business. It's everyone needs to eat every day, so that's one of our constants out there in the freight world.
My brother is in the food business based on the not theory, but fact that, hey, everybody's got to eat. That being said, Tim, and thanks for that. That being said, you just came back from California attending the 61st Annual Food Shippers of America Conference. And we've got a lot of things to talk about that were part of the theme there. The overall theme is the ever-changing environment, and boy, you can go in 1,000 different directions there. But tell us a little bit about your takeaway from the convention or the conference overall.
Well, overall, just from a high level, yes, we live in an ever-changing world, and I think the overall discussions were how fast things now change. With just I'd say in freight in general, we used to have cycles in freight that were a little bit longer than they are today. Maybe at least 1 year, maybe 3 to 5 year cycles as supply and demand would go up and down and go up with the economy. But now, gosh, it almost seems like we have quarterly, if not monthly, cycles in the industry. So that constant balance between having the right number of trucks and the right available loads is really becoming a lot more dynamic. And so there was a lot of discussion on how technology impacts that with respect to ensuring we're matching up capacity in the right places where the shippers have demand, but then also in streamlining the supply chain system, and how that has actually caused some of those quicker swings in doing better forecasting on what product is needed and where, and so having a much, I'd call it tighter. We've talked about just in time a lot over the years, but now we're talking about even having tighter inventory. So, just with that technology and the advancements that our customers are making, it's almost hard to keep up out there anymore.
Tim, it's very interesting you bring that up, and this isn't necessarily a parallel, but I think it kind of fits in the same ballpark. Yesterday on the program, I ran through a report coming out of Mercedes-Benz over in Germany, making automobiles, not the trucks, but they, like every other auto manufacturer, use robots on the line. Guess what robots are being replaced with now? People. And the reason for that is because of the ever-changing environment in the automotive world. They need to come out with different models quicker. They need to come out with different accessory and convenience packages quicker. And people can do it quick, but you can't train a robot overnight. And people are starting to replace robots in some of these factories. And one of the things that you guys talked about out there at the conference was where people fit into this changing environment. And I would imagine you can have all the technology in the world, but if you don't have the right people controlling that technology and even, in a sense, responding to that technology, the technology alone is not going to do it. It still comes down to good old-fashioned people, right?
Absolutely, and it's I guess it is a good parallel, that story you mentioned, because some of the discussion was about people in the different generations in the industry, and of course that's true in all industries, where we have to cycle back and ensure the people that are coming into our industry do understand, I'll call it, for lack of a better word, the basics, because just as the same thing you mentioned, technology is changing us so fast in so many different ways, that if we become too reliant on the technology and not have the whole understanding of how our industry works, we can lose out, and that change can actually become, that technological change can become a hindrance because we rely too much on that. It sounds a little bit like that's exactly what Mercedes was facing. So not unique, I guess, to us in the transportation industry, but people are so important, and that's something that I've been proud of here at Crete Carrier and Schaefer Trucking, being a privately owned, family-owned company. That's something we've had focus on for many, many years, and that certainly has been a big part of our success. So I'm glad there is that focus, back in our industry and others, on the importance of having the right people, treating them well, and knowing that, yes, technology is important, but technology is a tool. It still takes the people to make the right decisions and know when to adapt and help with the speed of adaptation.
Indeed. Some of the things that were discussed out there are how quickly supply and demand is changing for shipping capacity, and also a lot of discussion, I would imagine, both formally and informally. In panel discussions and presentations, you have all of that stuff going on, but then you have, the hallway water cooler talk and things like that. And the current state of the industry certainly comes up quite a bit. Is there a consensus among the attendees out there at the conference in terms of how the state of the industry looks right now?
Well, I think for the most part, right now it's a little uncertain, and capacity. There seems to be more trucks right now than there is some demand out there. But I think the consensus is that's kind of a first half of this year feeling. There is some inventory out there that needs to be worked down, and it's on its way down. So that's a positive sign, and that they don't think the inventory levels will get to where they were below 2014. I think everyone saw the impact of when you have a big sudden increase in demand for trucks, what that can have, and a lot of folks ran short of inventory then, so we're probably not going to get to those levels before that. And so there's right now, I'd say the consensus is it's still a little, along with the rest of the economy, of course, a little bit softer out there, but this is hopefully a first half of the year phenomena, and by we get through spring here and we start seeing some pickup there, that the second half of the year, everyone is, I think, much more optimistic I'd say overall there's some customers out there that are growing, maybe 2 to 3%, so not very much, and there's others that are, just trying to maintain. Didn't hear too many that were saying, hey, we're going, full bore and really having a great first start to the year. So I think it's I think probably what a lot of drivers are out there feeling. You normally have that January, February slowdown, so we have that. On top of that, we have a little bit with the economy being slower. But the good thing I took away from it is there's optimism about the second half of the year.
Let me ask you this too, and I think that's what we've been getting here too in terms of the year. Although I think you'll admit that most of, if we have pundits in this industry, I don't know if we do or not, but most of the talk at the end of last year was how good the first half of this year was going to be, and that pretty much went away pretty fast. I mean, we're just starting March here now. But my question here is, and there may be a sense, maybe not, Tim, trucking is seasonal, demand is seasonal, especially in the food industry. You've got all kinds of stuff going on there, and weather and all of that and whatnot, trends and everything else. But so you have this up and down, ebb and flow in terms of demand capacity. Are those ups and downs going from a nice, smooth, hilly ride to a up and down, up and down, up and down, to where you kind of just bouncing around? In other words, are these trends kind of hitting the industry as opposed to easing into the industry, if that makes any kind of sense?
It does, absolutely, and I think I think you're exactly right. I think as we talked a little bit earlier, things are changing much quicker today, and we see that certainly being the size we are between Crete and Schaefer, we can see even daily and weekly demand. Where, as I mentioned, you used to have a little bit more gradual slopes, and you'd kind of know towards the end of the month you might have a little bit stronger push as some companies got some freight out towards the end of the month for some sales quotas or otherwise, and it's certainly the same at the end of the quarter. Now it's much harder to predict that. You can have a spike week the second week of the month, and then the end of the month could be softer, and it could just change that quick. And again, I think that's what I took from the conferences is that is really people not as much trying to look towards how do I meet. It used to be in the past maybe you tried to meet a sales number at the end of a period. Now it's more of, okay, how do I ensure throughout the entire time cycle I have inventory that meets the current demand of the customer. So whatever that weekly demand is, which may be influenced by weather and some other things that you mentioned. So it is much more up and down than it used to be, more of that smooth rolling hills of like western Nebraska or rolling sand hills. We're more in the Rockies, up and down now.
Yeah, wow. And there are other things too that play from within and without the industry, things that are causing changes to supply and demand. The ELD rule that's in place now, I don't know if we really need to hash through that. I think that's pretty much what it is. There is a suit out there, of course, so we won't get into that aspect of it. But that'll have an effect. That will definitely have an effect. Is there anything that we don't know that came out of the conference, Tim, about ELDs that you feel worthy of mentioning here?
Well, I think probably the only thing I could add is what you're hearing from the shippers out there about it, is that was a topic of them, and I think there's a few different approaches being taken. There's sort of that, well, let's take a wait and see approach. Let's see what happens with the the lawsuits. Does the regulation come into play? What will the actual fallout be, and we'll deal with it when it happens. There's the others that are wanting to play a little bit safer and know exactly kind of what's going on along the way and are following it closely, but still not maybe doing anything different. And then there's those at the other extreme. They know it's going to have an impact, so they're starting today to ensure that they're going to have the trucks that they need when trucks either exit the industry, or more appropriately probably drivers exit the industry, or the productivity is impacted because of the ELDs, and know there'll be more demands for the drivers and field trucks that are there that are that are being proactive and getting those trucks today. So I guess the only thing I'd add is that there's a spectrum of response out there from shippers, as much as the same as there is amongst, I know, your listeners and the drivers out there, as to, hey, what's actually going to happen. And I guess, as they say, we won't know until it actually happens. So, it'll be interesting, and I guess the good thing is that shippers are talking about it and know it's out there, and we may have to have some changes in how we do things in the future.
One of the things that really deserves mention here that we, frankly, and I know we should have, and we did not on this program, get into before, is the FSMA. Folks don't know what that is, and they don't, but it's the Food Safety Modernization Act. The FDA is saying this is the biggest sweeping change in food safety in 70 years. I think it was signed late last year by the president, or very, very early this year. In fact, it was early this year, wasn't it? Early part of January that the president signed the Food Safety Modernization Act. Was that a big buzz throughout the convention this year?
It was, and it has been, amongst our food shippers as this was coming down the pike. And, one thing I think we have to try to remember, a lot of times we get in our own little world, but for the food industry, this is a very sweeping change, not only just for the transportation piece of it, but along their whole supply chain on accountability for food safety. And of course, transportation is a very important part of that. And, people want to obviously ensure we have a very safe food supply. And, the FDA, as you mentioned, and the USDA are a big part of that, and the regulations that they bring out or provide some guidelines out there for that, and certainly some laws that even must be followed. And food manufacturers, have their own QA programs, and of course they're very robust because they want to have good quality product and protect their brand. And so this is another level now that's being put on top of that they're very concerned about, not only to protect the brand but ensure compliance with the law. And a big part of this is going to be information. And in our technology age, it's going to be information and information right now. And so, where it kind of overlaps with us is sort of ensuring we have a full, I'll call it chain of custody from an information standpoint, knowing exactly where all that product is, when, has it been secure, what temperature is it at, who's had access to it, anything you can imagine about data on that product, and we have to be able to provide it to our shippers right now. And so, as a carrier, that's something that we have to be looking at and say, how do we comply with our shippers' needs, and then, of course, their needs to meet the regulations of the Food Safety Modernization Act. So for Schaefer Trucking, for example, we've invested in untethered trailer tracking that we're putting in all of our trailers, which will provide that electronic real-time monitoring of obviously performance of our refrigeration units, but then air temperature, and another thing that's on there is door monitors. So again, security, integrity of that cargo is very important. So has the door been opened and closed en route or otherwise? That's the type of information that our customers are going to need to be able to comply with the Food Safety Modernization Act.
Are those things mandated in the act, or is that something like you guys are doing?
Well, the particular method of how you gather the data is not mandated in the act, but what data you need is. So you need to be able to provide, for what now we would call, like a download of the refrigeration unit. So the time period as to what was the temperature of the intake air, the air going out into the trailer, and what was the ambient air temperature in there along the whole trip. And right now, most refrigeration units, you can do that, but you have to do that by taking it into a dealer that is either Carrier, Thermo King dealer, whatever your refrigeration unit may be, and they have to manually hook up a laptop or otherwise and download that information. The speed at which that information is going to be required to deliver, it's almost not practical to do that anymore. So that's why we've made the decision to put on the trailer tracking that can provide that information, instantaneously over the cellular data network out there. So while that's not mandated in the act itself, certainly the the ease of compliance will require that carriers like us invest in that type of technology.
Got it.
And then our customers will also require that because they want to have that information quickly.
Well, let me ask you this, and this may be a loaded question. I'm not sure, Tim. The ELD, a lot of companies went with ELDs. A lot of people say, you know what, most of trucking was going to do that anyway. You didn't need a regulation. You didn't need a mandate. Do you see the technology, the door monitors and things like that you guys have are installing now? Do you see that technology or any particular technology becoming mandated, or do you think it'll be left alone and everybody will choose their own methods?
Well, as we've talked about in the past, personally, I think less regulation is always better, but certainly understand the need for safety. And I do think that the industry and us working with our customers can come up with the best ways to do that. I think what you're alluding to is, unfortunately, sometimes as we find the best ways to do that, the regulatory agencies grab onto that and say, well, everybody needs to do that.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was getting at.
Yeah, which does create, in some ways, a level playing field out there, but in some ways also maybe inhibits the advancement of that technology, because you always want to find the better thing, too, to ensure we have compliance and certainly do it at a cost-effective manner. So, I think in the food safety area, I don't see that right now in what at least I've seen and read about what the agencies are looking to do. But certainly 3-5 years down the road, is if they're coming in looking at, in situation A, when we dealt with a situation of...
so never say never, right?
Right. Carrier had this technology. Well, that's good technology. Maybe everybody should have it. So,
Tim, thank you so much. It's great to have